Welcome back to the Mind Shelf, where we dive deep into the essential skills that transform how we connect with others and navigate life's challenges. Today we're exploring one of the most powerful yet underutilized abilities in human interaction: communicating with empathy, especially when tensions are high and conflicts arise. Whether you're dealing with a heated disagreement with a loved one, managing workplace tensions, or trying to bridge differences with someone who sees the world completely differently than you do, empathetic communication can turn destructive conflicts into opportunities for deeper understanding and stronger relationships. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover the psychology behind empathetic communication, learn practical techniques that work even when emotions are running high, and discover how to maintain your own emotional balance while truly hearing others. Let's transform the way you handle conflict forever. How to communicate with empathy, even in conflict. Conflict is an inevitable part of human relationships, but how we navigate these challenging moments determines whether they become bridges or barriers. Empathetic communication transforms confrontation into connection, turning potential relationship damage into opportunities for deeper understanding and stronger bonds. The ability to communicate with empathy during conflict isn't just a nice-to-have social skill. It's a fundamental life competency that impacts every relationship you have. When we learn to approach disagreements with genuine understanding and emotional intelligence, we unlock the power to resolve disputes peacefully, maintain respect even in heated moments, and often discover solutions that wouldn't have been possible through adversarial communication. Understanding empathy in communication. Empathy in communication goes far beyond simply being nice or agreeable during difficult conversations. True empathetic communication requires the courage to step outside your own perspective and genuinely attempt to understand another person's experience, feelings, and viewpoint, even when you strongly disagree with them. At its core, empathetic communication involves three essential components: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate action. Cognitive empathy allows you to intellectually understand another person's perspective without necessarily feeling their emotions. Emotional empathy involves actually feeling what others are experiencing, sharing in their emotional state. Compassionate action combines both forms of empathy with the motivation to respond in ways that acknowledge and validate the other person's experience. The neuroscience of empathy reveals fascinating insights about how our brains process conflict and connection. When we encounter conflict, our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, often triggers a fight or flight response that can hijack our ability to think clearly and respond empathetically. However, when we consciously engage our prefrontal cortex through empathetic practices, we can override these automatic responses and access higher-level thinking that enables more constructive communication. Research shows that empathetic communication activates mirror neurons in both the speaker and listener, creating a neurological foundation for mutual understanding. This biological basis for empathy explains why we often feel more understood and less defensive when someone approaches us with genuine empathy, even if they're delivering difficult feedback or disagreeing with our position. The psychology of conflict. To communicate empathetically during conflict, we must first understand what happens psychologically when people disagree. Conflict triggers deep-seated psychological needs and fears that often have little to do with the surface-level disagreement. Understanding these underlying dynamics is crucial for empathetic communication. When humans experience conflict, several psychological mechanisms activate simultaneously. The ego defense system kicks in to protect our sense of self and our beliefs about reality. This can manifest as rationalization, projection, or denial. Simultaneously, our attachment system becomes activated, triggering fears about rejection, abandonment, or loss of connection. These psychological responses explain why conflicts often feel much more intense than the actual issue being discussed would warrant. People in conflict are frequently responding not just to what's happening in the moment, but to past hurts, unmet needs, and unfulfilled expectations. They may be fighting for validation, recognition, security, or simply the feeling of being heard and understood. When we recognize these deeper psychological needs, we can respond with empathy rather than getting caught up in the surface-level content of the disagreement. The role of shame in conflict cannot be overstated. Many aggressive or defensive behaviors during disagreements stem from shame. The feeling that there's something fundamentally wrong with us. When people feel ashamed, they often respond with blame, criticism, or withdrawal. Empathetic communication can help diffuse shame by offering validation and understanding rather than judgment and criticism. Understanding defensive mechanisms helps us respond more empathetically when others become defensive during conflict. Defensiveness typically arises when people feel attacked, misunderstood, or threatened. Instead of taking defensive behavior personally, empathetic communicators recognize it as a signal that the other person is feeling vulnerable and needs safety and understanding. Core principles of empathetic communication. Empathetic communication during conflict rests on several fundamental principles that guide both our internal approach and external behavior. These principles serve as anchors during difficult conversations, helping us maintain our empathetic stance even when emotions are high and the temptation to react defensively is strong. The first principle is unconditional positive regard, maintaining basic respect and care for the other person as a human being, regardless of how they're behaving or what they're saying. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything they say or accepting harmful behavior, but rather recognizing their inherent worth and assuming positive intent whenever possible. Emotional validation forms another cornerstone of empathetic communication. Validation means acknowledging and accepting another person's feelings as legitimate and understandable, even if you don't agree with their conclusions or actions. Validation doesn't require agreement. It simply recognizes that their feelings make sense from their perspective and deserve acknowledgement. Non-judgmental presence involves showing up fully in the conversation without mentally criticizing, analyzing, or formulating counter-arguments while the other person is speaking. This requires genuine curiosity about their experience and a willingness to temporarily suspend your own agenda to truly understand theirs. The principle of emotional regulation emphasizes the importance of managing your own emotional state during conflict. You cannot offer genuine empathy when you're flooded with your own emotions. This involves developing the ability to notice when you're becoming activated, taking steps to regulate your nervous system, and maintaining enough emotional equilibrium to stay present and empathetic. Collaborative problem-solving replaces the win-lose mentality that often characterizes conflict with a shared commitment to finding solutions that honor everyone's core needs and concerns. This principle recognizes that the goal isn't to prove who's right, but to find ways forward that strengthen the relationship and address underlying issues. Practical techniques for empathetic listening. Empathetic listening during conflict requires specific skills that can be developed through practice and conscious effort. These techniques help create the emotional safety necessary for productive dialogue and genuine understanding. Active listening involves giving your complete attention to the other person's words, tone, and body language. This means putting away distractions, making appropriate eye contact, and using your body language to show engagement. Active listening also involves asking clarifying questions and reflecting back what you've heard to ensure understanding. Reflective responding involves paraphrasing what you've heard in your own words to confirm understanding and show that you're genuinely listening. This might sound like, "What I'm hearing is that you felt dismissed when I made that decision without consulting you. Is that accurate?" This technique helps prevent misunderstandings and shows the other person that their perspective is being taken seriously. Emotional labeling involves identifying and naming the emotions you're observing in the other person. This can help them feel understood and can also help de-escalate emotional intensity. For example, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated and maybe a little hurt by what happened." Emotional labeling validates the other person's experience and can help them feel less alone in their emotions. The technique of perspective taking involves explicitly trying to understand the situation from the other person's point of view. This might involve asking questions like, "Help me understand how this situation looks from your perspective," or "What would need to happen for you to feel heard in this conversation?" Summarizing and checking for understanding involves periodically summarizing what you've heard and asking if your understanding is accurate. This prevents miscommunication and shows that you're making a genuine effort to understand their position. It also provides natural pause points in the conversation that can help regulate emotional intensity. Managing your own emotions during conflict. Empathetic communication requires emotional self-regulation, the ability to stay centered and responsive rather than reactive during difficult conversations. This involves developing awareness of your own emotional triggers and learning techniques for maintaining emotional equilibrium even when others are upset or attacking. Recognizing your emotional triggers is the first step in emotional regulation. Common triggers during conflict include feeling misunderstood, criticized, blamed, or dismissed. When you know your triggers, you can prepare for them and implement regulation strategies before becoming overwhelmed. Breathing techniques can be powerful tools for emotional regulation during conflict. Deep, slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps counteract the fight or flight response. Simple techniques like box breathing, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4 can help you stay centered during challenging conversations. The practice of self-compassion becomes crucial during conflict, especially when you make mistakes or find yourself reacting defensively. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend, recognizing that imperfection is part of being human, and understanding that everyone struggles with difficult emotions during conflict. Grounding techniques help you stay present and connected to your body during emotional conversations. This might involve feeling your feet on the floor, noticing your breath, or briefly touching a meaningful object. Grounding helps prevent emotional flooding and keeps you available for empathetic responding. Setting internal boundaries involves recognizing what you can and cannot control during conflict. You can control your own responses, words, and actions, but you cannot control the other person's behavior or emotions. Accepting this limitation reduces stress and helps you focus your energy on what you actually have influence over. Understanding different conflict styles. People approach conflict differently based on their personality, past experiences, and cultural background. Understanding these different styles helps you adapt your empathetic communication approach to meet people where they are and communicate in ways that feel natural and safe to them. Some people have an assertive conflict style, preferring direct, honest communication about disagreements. They may appreciate straightforward feedback and open discussion of differences. When communicating empathetically with assertive individuals, you can often be quite direct while still showing understanding and respect for their perspective. Others have an avoidant conflict style, preferring to minimize or avoid disagreement altogether. These individuals may become overwhelmed by direct confrontation and need extra reassurance of safety and acceptance. Empathetic communication with avoidant individuals often requires gentleness, patience, and explicit reassurance that the relationship is secure despite the disagreement. Aggressive conflict styles involve attacking, blaming, or attempting to dominate during disagreements. While this behavior can be challenging, it often stems from feelings of vulnerability, fear, or past hurt. Empathetic communication with aggressive individuals involves staying calm, setting clear boundaries, and looking beneath the aggressive behavior for the underlying emotions and needs. People with accommodating conflict styles tend to give in quickly to avoid tension, often at the expense of their own needs and feelings. Empathetic communication with accommodating individuals involves creating extra safety for them to express their true thoughts and feelings, and reassuring them that their perspectives are valued. Collaborative conflict styles involve seeking win-win solutions that address everyone's needs. People with this style often respond well to empathetic communication that focuses on understanding all perspectives and finding creative solutions that honor everyone's core concerns. The language of empathy. The specific words we choose during conflict can either escalate tension or create opportunities for understanding and connection. Empathetic language demonstrates care, creates safety, and invites collaboration rather than defensiveness. I statements help you express your own experience without blaming or attacking the other person. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you might say, "I feel unheard when our conversations move quickly without pause for my input." This approach takes ownership of your experience while still addressing the issue. Curious questions invite exploration and understanding rather than demanding justification or creating defensiveness. Questions like, "Can you help me understand your perspective on this?" or "What would be most helpful for you in this situation?" show genuine interest in the other person's experience. Validating language acknowledges the other person's experience without necessarily agreeing with their conclusions. Phrases like, "That makes sense," "I can understand why you'd feel that way," or "Your feelings about this are completely valid," help people feel heard and understood. Tentative language shows humility and openness to other perspectives. Using phrases like, "It seems to me," "I might be wrong, but tar nor from my perspective," acknowledges that your viewpoint is one of several possible interpretations of the situation. Collaborative language emphasizes partnership and shared problem solving. Words and phrases like "we," "together," "our challenge," and "how can we" create a sense of unity rather than opposition. This language helps frame conflicts as shared problems to be solved together rather than battles to be won. De-escalation strategies. When conflicts become heated, specific de-escalation strategies can help lower emotional intensity and create space for more empathetic communication. These strategies focus on creating emotional safety and slowing down the pace of interaction to allow for more thoughtful responses. Acknowledging emotions involves recognizing and validating the emotional intensity in the conversation. You might say something like, "I can see this is really important to you and brings up strong feelings. I want to understand." This acknowledgement helps people feel seen and can reduce the need to escalate to get attention. Taking breaks when emotions are high can prevent damage and allow everyone to regulate their nervous systems. You might suggest, "I can see we're both feeling intense about this. What if we take a 20-minute break and come back when we're both feeling more centered?" This isn't avoidance. It's strategic emotional regulation. Slowing down the conversation involves speaking more slowly, pausing more frequently, and resisting the urge to respond immediately to every point. This slower pace gives everyone time to process emotions and thoughts, reducing the likelihood of reactive responses. Finding common ground involves identifying shared values, concerns, or goals even in the midst of disagreement. You might say, "Even though we disagree about the solution, I think we both care deeply about our family's well-being." Or, "We both want this project to succeed even though we have different ideas about how to get there." Apologizing for your own contribution to the conflict, when appropriate, can significantly de-escalate tension. This doesn't mean taking responsibility for things that aren't your fault, but rather acknowledging where your own behavior may have contributed to misunderstanding or hurt feelings. Building bridges through understanding. Empathetic communication during conflict isn't just about managing difficult moments. It's about using those moments to build deeper understanding and stronger relationships. This involves looking for opportunities to create connection, even in the midst of disagreement. Sharing your own vulnerability can invite reciprocal openness and create emotional intimacy. This might involve admitting when you're wrong, sharing your own fears or insecurities related to the situation, or acknowledging the ways your own behavior may have contributed to the conflict. Looking for the positive intention behind difficult behavior helps you respond to the person's underlying needs rather than just their surface actions. Even aggressive or defensive behavior often stems from positive intentions like self-protection, caring for others, or trying to meet legitimate needs. Expressing appreciation for the other person's willingness to engage in difficult conversations shows that you value the relationship and their investment in working through problems. You might say, "I appreciate that you're willing to have this hard conversation with me. It shows how much you care about our relationship." Finding opportunities for agreement, even on small points, helps build momentum toward resolution and creates positive interactions within the conflict. Look for any aspect of their perspective that you can genuinely agree with or validate. Creating shared meaning involves working together to understand what the conflict represents for each person and what resolution might look like. This often involves exploring values, needs, and hopes rather than just focusing on positions or demands. Cultural considerations and empathetic communication. Cultural background significantly influences how people experience and express conflict. An empathetic communication must account for these differences to be truly effective. What feels empathetic in one culture may feel intrusive or inappropriate in another. High-context cultures often communicate meaning through nonverbal cues, implications, and shared understanding rather than direct verbal expression. In these cultures, empathetic communication might involve paying extra attention to subtle cues and allowing for indirect communication about difficult topics. Low-context cultures typically value direct, explicit communication and may interpret indirect communication as unclear or evasive. In these contexts, empathetic communication might involve being more straightforward while still maintaining warmth and respect. Collectivist cultures emphasize group harmony and may view direct confrontation as harmful to relationships and community. Empathetic communication in collectivist contexts often involves greater attention to face-saving, group dynamics, and finding solutions that maintain harmony. Individualist cultures may place greater emphasis on personal rights, individual expression, and direct problem-solving. Empathetic communication in these contexts might focus more on understanding individual perspectives and finding solutions that respect personal autonomy. Power distance. The extent to which cultures accept inequality in authority and status also affects conflict communication. In high-power distance cultures, empathetic communication may need to account for hierarchical relationships and appropriate deference to authority figures. Advanced empathetic communication techniques. As you develop your empathetic communication skills, more advanced techniques can help you navigate complex conflicts and create profound shifts in difficult relationships. Perspective rotation involves explicitly trying to see the situation from multiple viewpoints, including third-party perspectives. You might ask, if a neutral observer were watching this conversation, what might they notice? Or how might this situation look to someone who cares about both of us? Emotional granularity involves helping yourself and others identify and express emotions with greater precision and nuance. Instead of simply acknowledging that someone is upset, you might explore whether they're feeling disappointed, frustrated, hurt, scared, or overwhelmed. This precision helps create more targeted, empathetic responses. Timeline perspective involves exploring how the current conflict connects to past experiences and future hopes. You might ask, has this happened before in other relationships? Or what are you hoping will be different going forward? This broader perspective often reveals deeper needs and concerns. Values exploration involves understanding the core values and principles that drive each person's position in the conflict. Often, what looks like irreconcilable differences in position stems from shared values being expressed in different ways. Solution-focused questioning helps shift from problem analysis to collaborative solution finding. Questions like, what would need to happen for you to feel good about this situation? Or, if we could wave a magic wand and resolve this perfectly, what would that look like? Invite creative thinking and hope, maintaining empathy when boundaries are needed. Sometimes empathetic communication requires setting clear boundaries or saying no to requests or behaviors. Learning to maintain empathy while establishing limits is crucial for healthy relationships and personal well-being. Empathetic boundary setting involves acknowledging the other person's needs and feelings while still maintaining your own limits. You might say, "I understand this is really important to you and I care about your feelings. At the same time, I'm not able to commit to this right now." Explaining your boundaries with empathy helps others understand your position without feeling rejected or dismissed. This might involve sharing the values or needs that drive your boundary. "I want to be fully present when we have important conversations, which is why I need to finish this project before we talk." Offering alternatives when possible shows that your boundary isn't about rejection but about finding ways to meet needs that work for everyone. If you can't do exactly what someone is asking, consider what you can do instead. Validating feelings while maintaining boundaries acknowledges that someone can be disappointed or upset about your boundary while still respecting it. You might say, "I understand you're disappointed that I can't stay longer tonight. That feeling makes complete sense and I still need to leave by 9 p.m. Following through consistently on boundaries while maintaining empathy shows that your limits are real while preserving the relationship. This might involve acknowledging the impact of your boundary while still enforcing it. Repairing relationships after conflict. Even with the best empathetic communication skills, conflicts sometimes result in hurt feelings or relationship damage that requires intentional repair. The repair process is an opportunity to strengthen relationships and build greater trust and intimacy. Taking responsibility for your part in relationship damage involves acknowledging specific behaviors that may have caused hurt without minimizing or justifying them. A genuine apology might sound like, "I realized that when I raised my voice yesterday, it probably felt scary and disrespectful. I take full responsibility for that reaction." Making amends goes beyond apology to include specific actions that demonstrate your commitment to doing better. This might involve changing specific behaviors, learning new skills, or making concrete efforts to address the harm caused. Rebuilding trust requires consistency over time rather than grand gestures. Small, consistent actions that demonstrate reliability and care are more effective than dramatic promises that may not be sustainable. Learning from conflict involves reflection on what happened, what you might do differently next time, and what the conflict revealed about needs, patterns, or areas for growth. This learning mindset helps ensure that conflicts become opportunities for development rather than just problems to be solved. Strengthening intimacy through conflict resolution involves using the understanding gained through empathetic communication to create deeper connection and more authentic relationship dynamics. Often, working through conflict empathetically reveals important information about each person's inner world that can enhance intimacy. Building long-term empathetic communication habits. Developing consistent empathetic communication skills requires ongoing practice and commitment to personal growth. These habits become more natural over time, but require intentional cultivation initially. Daily empathy practice involves looking for opportunities to understand others' perspectives in low-stakes interactions throughout your day. This might involve trying to understand why someone made a particular choice, considering what might be driving someone's mood, or simply practicing active listening in routine conversations. Emotional awareness exercises help you recognize and understand your own emotional patterns, triggers, and responses. Regular check-ins with yourself about your emotional state, meditation practices, or journaling can enhance your capacity for emotional regulation during conflict. Conflict reflection involves thinking about past conflicts to identify patterns, successful strategies, and areas for improvement. This might involve journaling about challenging conversations, discussing conflicts with trusted friends or counselors, or reading about communication and conflict resolution. Seeking feedback from people you trust can help you understand how your communication style affects others and identify blind spots in your empathetic communication. Ask people close to you about times when they felt particularly understood or misunderstood by you. Ongoing learning through books, workshops, therapy, or other resources helps you continue developing your empathetic communication skills throughout your life. Communication and emotional intelligence are lifelong learning areas with always room for growth and refinement. The ripple effects of empathetic communication. When you consistently practice empathetic communication during conflict, the effects extend far beyond individual conversations to influence your overall relationship quality, personal well-being, and even broader community dynamics. Relationship satisfaction typically increases when conflicts are handled with empathy and understanding. People feel safer being authentic, more willing to address problems early before they become major issues, and more confident that the relationship can weather difficulties. Personal stress levels often decrease when you approach conflict with empathy rather than defensiveness or aggression. Empathetic communication reduces the physiological stress response associated with conflict and helps you feel more confident and capable in challenging interpersonal situations. Modeling empathetic communication influences others to communicate more empathetically as well. Children, colleagues, and friends often mirror the communication styles they experience, creating positive ripple effects in your broader social network. Problem-solving effectiveness improves when empathetic communication creates the emotional safety necessary for creative thinking and collaborative solution finding. When people feel understood and valued, they're more willing to be flexible and consider alternative approaches. Overall emotional intelligence develops through regular practice of empathetic communication. Skills like emotional awareness, regulation, and social awareness that are essential for empathetic communication also enhance other areas of life, including leadership, parenting, and personal relationships. The journey of developing empathetic communication skills is ongoing and deeply rewarding. Each conflict becomes an opportunity to practice these skills, deepen relationships, and contribute to a more understanding and compassionate world. When we approach disagreements with genuine curiosity, emotional regulation, and commitment to understanding, we transform conflicts from threats into opportunities for growth and connection. Remember that empathetic communication during conflict isn't about being perfect or never experiencing difficult emotions. It's about showing up with genuine care for both yourself and others, creating safety for authentic expression, and working together toward understanding and resolution. These skills take time to develop, but the investment pays dividends in every relationship and every challenging conversation you'll encounter throughout your life. As we wrap up today's exploration of empathetic communication during conflict, remember that mastering these skills is a journey, not a destination. Every difficult conversation is an opportunity to practice, grow, and strengthen your relationships. The techniques we've covered today, from active listening and emotional validation to boundary setting and conflict repair, are tools that become more natural and powerful with consistent practice. Start small by applying these principles in low-stakes conversations and gradually work your way up to more challenging conflicts. Remember, the goal isn't to avoid conflict entirely, but to transform how you navigate these inevitable human experiences. When you approach disagreements with genuine empathy and emotional intelligence, you don't just resolve problems. You build bridges, deepen understanding, and create the foundation for more authentic and resilient relationships. Thank you for joining us on the Mind Shelf today. If this content helped you see conflict in a new light, please subscribe for more insights on communication, personal development, and building stronger relationships. Until next time, keep growing, keep connecting, and remember that every conflict is an opportunity to choose understanding over judgment.